In this lesson, we're going to go over reflections on a coordinate system. So this is going to actually involve changing the coordinates. So for example, if we want to reflect over the x-axis, and we have triangle ABC, this triangle has some coordinates. First of all, A is at 1, 2, B is at 3, 5, and C we have at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So we're going to reflect it over the x-axis. We're going to flip it this way. So we're going to do what we normally do and just do 1 point at a time. So A is going to end up somewhere in this general area. Okay, if we look at A, we see it's 2 units from the x-axis. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to move it 2 units below the x-axis because right now it's 2 units above. So we go 1, 2 to the x. We go 1, 2 below the x. So this would be A prime. Then the coordinates here are 1, negative 2. Let's do the same for B. B is at 3, 5. So it's 5 units above the x-axis. So we're going to go 5 units below the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And notice it's still in line with x equals 3. So B prime is 3, negative 5. Look at point C, it's at 7, 1. So it's 1 point above the x-axis. So we're going to go 1 point below the x-axis. So if C is at 7, negative 1. Let's just connect these. And we see our reflection over the x-axis. So when we reflect over the x-axis, something happens to the coordinates. The initial coordinates, we'll just say, are x, y. But they change. The x coordinate stays the same. The y coordinate is the same number, except now it's negative. So it goes from xy to x, negative y. So reflecting the x-axis, we would write as lowercase r x axes. Now let's do the same thing for reflecting in the y-axis. So we're going to reflect triangle ABC over the y-axis. So similar to reflecting over the x-axis, we're just going to do 1 point at a time. We'll start with A. A is at a coordinate 1, 2. So that means it's 1 point from the y-axis. So we're just going to move 1 point beyond the y-axis. So point A ends up here. This is A prime. And the coordinate is negative 1, 2. If we look at B, B is at 3, 5. So that means it's 3 coordinates from the y-axis. So we're going to move 3 coordinates on the other side of the y-axis. So that'll be right here. So if B prime is negative 3, 5. And finally C is at 7, 1. So it has to go 7 points to get to the y-axis. We're going to go 7 points beyond the y-axis. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And a height of 1. So this is C prime. This is negative 7, 1. Now let's just draw a triangle. And we end up with the reflection of ABC over the y-axis, let's look at how these coordinates changed. So originally we had just coordinates x and y. So for example, 1 and 2. But it became negative 1 and 2. So the x coordinate became negative and the y stayed the same. Just like with point B. It was 3, 5 and became negative 3, 5. Point C is at 7, 1 and image is at negative 7, 1. So xy becomes negative x, y. So let's recap. The rule for reflecting over the x-axis is that the original coordinates xy become x, negative y. So the x coordinate stays the same, the y coordinate becomes negative. And for reflecting over the y-axis, we get that xy becomes negative x, y. So the x becomes negative and y stays the same. So if you reflect it over the x-axis, the x coordinate stays the same. If you reflect it over the y-axis, the y coordinate stays the same. The other coordinate becomes negative.